Ciao a tutti e benvenuti al Tavolo Italiano. Welcome to the lesson on conjugating regular Italian verbs in the congiuntivo trapassato. Conjugating regular Italian verbs in the congiuntivo trapassato. A few footnotes before we start. This lesson assumes you know how to conjugate verbs in the congiuntivo imperfetto, and the congiuntivo passato. You will also need to have a general understanding of the trapassato prossimo. And as with all other tenses, there are verbs that are irregular. These will be addressed individually elsewhere. You can find more information, exercises, etc. at tavoloitaliano.com. Like any aspect of Italian grammar, it takes practice to really gain an understanding of and ability to use what you'll learn here. So, parli italiano. Pronto? Okay, then let's get started. The congiuntivo trapassato, or the pluperfect subjunctive, like the present subjunctive, is actually very easy to learn as far as the conjugation patterns, and it isn't quite as difficult to understand when we use if you already have learned the congiuntivo imperfetto, and the congiuntivo passato. In review, when studying the congiuntivo subjunctive, we learned that it really isn't a verb tense, but a mood, which explains why we can have the present subjunctive, the imperfect subjunctive, past subjunctive, and pluperfect subjunctive. To quickly review, we looked at the following. What is this mood? It is the use of a verb in a subjective expression. Wow, what does that mean? The website audioenglish.net defines subjective as taking place within the mind, and modified by individual bias, of a mental act performed entirely within the mind. In other words, if I said, he ate meat, there is nothing subjective there, nothing taking place in my mind. It simply means he ate meat. But if I said, I thought that he had eaten meat, now it is in the subjective, because I'm stating that according to a thought in my mind, he had eaten meat. Note in this lesson I placed the verb in the main clause in the past tense. In this lesson we'll be studying how we make the past perfect or pluperfect subjective expressions, or expressing what was taking place within our minds, and or attaining a statement with our own bias in subordinate clauses, or what we will call a that clause, or for the Italian examples, the che clause. For instance, let's look at our first example. I thought he had eaten meat. Remember, in Italian, there's a completely different conjugation system or pattern for verbs that are in the dependent that or che clause. Verbs that are tainted by bias expressed by another verb in the subjective in nature. In this case, the verb to eat, or as used in this sentence, had eaten. Let's take a look at it in Italian. Pensavo che lui avesse mangiato la carne. You'll notice that lui aveva mangiato isn't how we would conjugate mangiare for lui in this case. That is because we have to use the pluperfect subjunctive tense, as it is no longer just a statement of fact, but instead now it is an expression of an opinion, a subjective expression. A few other examples could be, he believed that they had spoken yesterday. Credevo che avessero parlato ieri. Or, I hoped that they had arrived. Speravo che fossero arrivati. Or, I believe that we had been right. Credo che aveste avuto ragione. It is important to note that in this lesson we are only addressing the pluperfect subjunctive, or congiuntivo trapassato, and only when we have to because of a that or che clause. We'll address the other congiuntivo or subjective tenses and other instances that dictate their use in other lessons. The goal, as always, is to try to get a good grasp on a little information instead of a hazy understanding about a lot of information. With the present subjunctive, both verbs, the main clause verb and the dependent clause verb, are in the present tense. So if we were saying, I think, or you believe, or he hopes, for an action that is in the present tense, we know to use the present subjunctive. We use the pluperfect subjunctive when the main clause verb is in the past, and the dependent K clause verb is in the past as viewed from the verb in the main clause, or it's in the past as viewed from the past. A few other examples are: Credevo che lui avesse avuto ragione. I thought he had been right. Speravamo che tu fossi venuto. We hoped that you had come. Pensavi che io fossi andato a Parigi. You thought that I had gone to Paris? Before we take a look at how to conjugate in the pluperfect subjunctive congiuntivo trapassato, let's quickly review how to conjugate essere and avere in the congiuntivo imperfetto. This is because if you know how to conjugate these two verbs in the congiuntivo imperfetto, and you know the past participles of the verbs you want to use, then you already know how to conjugate in the congiuntivo trapassato. That's the beauty of a modular language, taking parts of the language you know and combining them to create other parts of the language. Essere, conjugated in the congiuntivo imperfetto. Che io fossi, that I was. Che tu fossi, that you were. Che lui le fosse, that he or she was. Che noi fossimo, che noi fossimo, that we were. Che voi foste, that y'all were. Che loro fossero, that they were. The reason being able to conjugate essere and avere in the imperfect subjunctive congiuntivo imperfetto, along with the knowledge of the past participles, is key to il congiuntivo trapassato, is because the verb in the K clause is basically the subjunctive version of the trapassato prossimo. This means that we follow the same rules in determining whether we use essere or avere as the auxiliary verb. That is why I said this is the beauty of a modular language, taking parts of the language you know and combining them to create other parts of the language that you are learning. Avere, conjugated in the congiuntivo imperfetto. Che io avessi, that I used to have. Che tu avessi, that you used to have. Che lui, lei avesse, that he, she used to have. Che noi avessimo, that we used to have. Che voi aveste, that y'all used to have. Che loro avessero, that they used to have. You probably guessed that we conjugate in the pluperfect subjunctive congiuntivo trapassato, just like the trapassato prossimo. But we conjugate essere and avere in the congiuntivo imperfetto instead of just the imperfetto. To conjugate regular are verbs in the congiuntivo trapassato, we have che plus the optional subject pronoun, plus auxiliary verb conjugated in the congiuntivo imperfetto, plus the past participle, equals the conjugated verb. Example, che, or that, plus voi, optional subject pronoun, plus aveste, plus parlare, to speak, minus are equals par, plus atto, the past participle for parlare, equals che voi aveste parlato, that y'all had spoken. Parlare, conjugated in the congiuntivo trapassato. Che io avessi parlato, that I had spoken. Che tu avessi parlato, that you had spoken. Che lui, lei avesse parlato, that he or she had spoken. Che noi avessimo parlato, that we had spoken. Che voi aveste parlato, that y'all had spoken. Che loro avessero parlato, that they had spoken. To conjugate regular ere verbs in the congiuntivo trapassato, we have che plus the object, or optional, optional subject pronoun, plus auxiliary verb conjugated in the congiuntivo imperfecto, plus the past participle equals conjugated verb. Our example is che or that plus io, optional subject pronoun, plus avessi plus visto, past participle for vedere, equals che io avessi visto, that I had seen. Vedere conjugated in the congiuntivo passato, or trapassato, scusi. Che io avessi visto, that I had seen. Che tu avessi visto, that you had seen. Che lui, lei avesse visto, that he or she had seen. Che noi avessimo visto, that we had seen. Che voi aveste visto, that they had seen. Che loro avessero visto, that they had seen. To conjugate the regular IRE verbs in the congiuntivo trapassato follows the exact same pattern. Che plus the optional subject pronoun plus the auxiliary verb conjugated in the congiuntivo imperfecto plus the past participle equals the conjugated verb. Example, che or that plus lui, our optional subject pronoun, plus avesse plus sentire, to speak, minus ire equals sent plus ito, the past participle for sentire. And we have che lui avesse sentito, that he had heard. Sentire conjugated in the congiuntivo trapassato. Che io avessi sentito, that I had heard. Che tu avessi sentito, that you had heard. Che lui, lei avesse sentito, that he or she had heard. Che noi avessimo sentito, that we had heard. Che voi aveste sentito, that y'all had heard. Che loro avessero sentito, that they had heard. Okay, now let's see if we can apply a little of what we have learned. See if you can translate the following into Italian before the answer appears. I thought that he had lied. Pensavo che lui avesse mentito. They wished that I had sung. Desideravano che io avessi cantato. We hoped that you had won. Speravamo che tu avessi vinto. Did you believe that they had known the truth? Credevi che avessero saputo la verità? I doubted that they had danced well. Dubitavo che loro avessero ballato bene. So how did you do? Did you get them all right? You know what? If not, don't worry about it, because you can go through this video as many times as you need to practice these, to see if you get them right. And once you do, come up with your own questions or statements in English and try translating those into the congiuntivo trapassato. Allora, grazie mille per aver studiato con il Tavolo Italiano. Thank you for having studied with the Italian table. We appreciate it greatly. Remember, you can find this lesson and many more all at iltavoloitaliano.com. We hope that you visit us and that you check out more of our videos, our quizzes, games, lessons, etc., etc., etc. In the meantime, keep studying, and remember, parli italiano.